Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Film Nerd Podcast. I'm Vince, and tonight I'm joined by three guests to continue our game of classics we are embarrassed we have not seen. From game 2, so this is part 2 of what originally was not going to be a multiple part series, but I decided it'd be fun to talk about a couple more of the movies that were brought up in the episode that these guys played with me. And I moderated, and some of the films they brought up, thought it would be interesting to explore a few more of them. So we talked about Babel in the last one, and that one was chosen by James. It was somewhat lukewarm in terms of its reception by the podcast here. I really enjoy it. James wasn't a huge fan. Zach and Kory thought it was okay. Now the pick that we're going to watch today is from Kory. Kory has chosen to pick Children of Men, weirdly enough, from the exact same year as Babel. You guys are just on cue here with the 2006 films. So before we get into before we get into Children of Men, Kory, Zach, James, how you doing? How about Zach starts? How you doing, Zach?
I'm doing great, Vincent. How are you today?
I am wonderful.
Good. Glad to hear.
James, how you doing?
Good. Coming off a long weekend. Feel a little discombobulated, but, we'll survive.
Is that why you were late?
Yes, exactly why I'm late.
Kory, how you doing, big fella?
I golfed poorly, but I'm here.
Is that a trend?
And with that, we'll go ahead and get things started here. So I want to introduce the film a little bit first. So we did talk about the movie in pretty decent detail in our episode that we did of classics we're embarrassed we have not seen. When we played the actual game, we kind of talked about the movie a little bit. Who was the one that used that game for one of their, or used that movie for the game as one of their rounds? Was it James?
Kory.
Children of Men, me.
Kory used it. So when Kory brought it up and no one else had seen it other than myself, we kind of talked about it a little bit. I mentioned how I had actually seen the movie. I remember seeing it in theaters. My dad took me to see it when I was 14. I remember not really getting it when I was 14. I remember thinking it was a cool movie, but I didn't really understand the ending, and I didn't really get the movie overall. And then years later, when I really got into movies in college, I kind of saw how much praise it had gotten. So I went back and rewatched it in like 2015 or 2016. I watched it like 10 years later. And now it's one of my favorite movies, and I've watched it a few times since. So what were your guys' initial thoughts? Zach, I'll start with you. Initial thoughts, and then we'll kind of break the movie down with a few different talking points.
Yeah. So I guess I should preface this with I watched this on an airplane on my iPhone. So what that's worth. I mean, I think I still got the full effect of it. I was on my headphones, so I could hear everything. But I liked it. I wouldn't say I loved it. Once again, I don't know that I'd call it a classic personally. I thought it was interesting given the situation that we're currently in with COVID and all that stuff. It kind of, it struck a chord, I guess, because of all that stuff. It was definitely interesting. I liked the kind of some of the concepts they brought up. And considering what the movie's about, we can talk about that, right? This is a spoiler alert podcast, right?
Yeah, so this, just like with Babel, this is heavy spoilers. So if you have not, I probably should have already said that, but you have not seen Children of Men from 2006, we are going to be talking heavy spoilers, absolutely. So before we get into some more details, let me jump over to Jim, because I just want to kind of get some initial thoughts here. Jim, how about you? Initial thoughts? Enjoy the movie?
Yeah, I did. I watched it this afternoon while dog sitting, so my attention got distracted a couple times where I think I missed a couple key things, which I'm really excited to discuss and hopefully kind of wrap together a few thoughts. But ever since I got done watching it, I've still been thinking about it, which I give a nod to the director and the film writers that I think that typically makes me believe it's a good film if I'm still thinking about it after I've done watching it. That being said, I thought it was really, really cool. I thought there were some really cool themes. Definitely, while I was watching it, I was like, Vincent's definitely. And I was going to say, 100% Vincent's going to talk about the cinematography. Bingo. Where Vince, I guarantee, was just going to rave about some of the scenes, because I being a novice, I was like, whoa, that seems kind of cool. So I give it 2 thumbs up.
Corey, what do you think?
So I'm an asshat, and I've seen this movie.
You suck at this game.
He
dude.
told
I know,
me-
I'm pretty
he-
bad at this game.
Corey got on Zoom before any of you guys did, and he told me that, and I'm like, this is the second straight movie we've discussed where you thought you hadn't seen it. and you
I watched it with my
was
good
all
old friend, the film nerd.
I was gonna say, you know what? Now that you bring that up, I think I remember watching this with you.
Yeah, it was either in my basement or your man cave, and I can't remember where. But I've seen this movie.
I think it was at your house. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, good movie. Pretty wild, but for me, if you really think about it, the way our world's going, we're not far from this kind of reality.
I actually, that's
Yeah.
like one of the first
Terrifying.
things. That's
Right.
like one of the first things I want to talk about. So actually, I'm glad that you kind of said that because that's my first talking point.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys saw my notes. Literally after initial thoughts, I wrote realism, especially now. So you guys all enjoyed it overall. Zach doesn't really think it's a classic, but he liked it. James,
Yeah.
it sounds like you really enjoyed it. Corey, you enjoyed it.
Yeah, good movie.
So this is one of my favorite movies in terms of this genre, science fiction dystopian future. I'd put it up there with Blade Runner or A Clockwork Orange, some of those, dystopian future sci-fi movies. Obviously this one's a little bit different than those two films. But I love this movie, and James brought it up, but the cinematography is iconic. They and I'll save that because that's something I want to talk about. But I do think this is a modern classic. I think, we're 15 years from this movie being released. People still talk about it. If you kind of, read some of the think pieces done about it, a lot of people, especially now, and this is why I want to talk about this first, it's more relevant than ever because this movie takes place in 2027, which was 21 years removed when it came out, but now we're only 6 years away. And other than the film's main driving idea, the idea of infertility, global infertility, obviously that isn't happening, but it kind of is. I don't know if you guys have read some of the articles about people complaining that millennials are not. I know it's a stretch. It's not the same thing, but I think it is kind of it parallels it a bit. How people are not complaining, but critical of the fact that millennials, our generation, are not reproducing at the rate high enough to replace the population. Apparently, the average millennial has I know it's always ridiculous when you hear something like this, but 1.6 kids on average, which they said it needs to be on average closer to 2 point something.
This is a little off topic, but I would argue, why do we need to replace the current population? I think
that article is neither here nor there. I was just saying in terms of trying to find parallels between,
in the words of Dwight Schrute, this world needs a new plague. That's one of those sensitive things.
We are in a pandemic.
What's crazy though is that some of the scenes where things were zoomed out and you could see in the background the pollution and the garbage and that kind of stuff. It was if we granted, I don't think we're 7 years from that. I mean, we're doing a better job now than we have even in leading up to now. But I mean, you could easily get to the point where we could become infertile because our land and our world is just so polluted.
Well, some of that stuff that you're mentioning, you see now really heavily in third world countries and, maybe not major cities, maybe major cities too, depending on what area of the city you're in. We're all from Michigan and we've spent a lot of time in Lansing. If you go to downtown Lansing, there's nice areas, but then there's areas of Lansing where it's this is not a very nice area. Not to the extreme. This movie, takes place in London, mostly in London. So, I mean, if you were to see London, Corey, you've been to London, right?
I was in London and I walked from the train station to the Louvre, and I walked through some areas that I was like, "What the hell am I looking at?"
I was in London, but most of the areas that I was when I went to London in 2016 were pretty nice areas. I'm sure, just like any major city, there's not so nice areas. But in this movie, they go to there are scenes where they go to iconic locations in London, and it's dystopian future. Everything's run down. There's, like you said, trash everywhere. I thought it was interesting that you noticed the trash because the when I was watching some behind the scenes stuff on this movie, the person who did the production design, one thing they tried to think 21 years removed from the present, they were like, if the world went to shit but technology still advanced, what would be things that would not advance? Like what would advance and what wouldn't? And they said infrastructure would start to fall apart first. So they mentioned that probably garbage services would be the first thing to really go. Like you would kind of have a situation where that system would be overwhelmed. And we kind of see that now, like with recycling and garbage and things like that. We've kind of seen that for a while where, you know, we could get to that point. You see massive landfills and things like that. Is it going to get to the point where, you know, we're going to have an overload of that kind of, you know, portion of society, the garbage system that's set in place? And I think that's a pretty realistic, you know, in terms of something that would steer downward in society. That might be the first thing to go. Some other things they said was infrastructure in terms of buildings and roads would not be kept up to date very well. Clothes, I thought that was interesting too. In the movie, they chose, I don't know if you noticed this, but they chose to dress people pretty plainly. I mean, it doesn't seem like for 21 years removed, you would think they might go for something maybe not bizarre, but like maybe a little bit different outfits. But it's pretty much like just people are wearing the same stuff they've worn for 20 years. And it kind of goes with that hopelessness. Like the main idea in the movie is, again, infertility. And in the movie, at the time the movie's taking place, it's been 18 years since the last kid was born anywhere in the world. So people have kind of lost hope and just like, what's the point? That's even like the main character of the movie is like, just doesn't care. He's not really a typical hero, which I think is interesting too. The protagonist is kind of, Clive Owen's character is just kind of like, he's an everyman and he's just kind of roped into this crazy situation that he really doesn't care about.
I thought it was cool how they addressed all those little things that would be different if a worldwide infertility happened. Like the fact that the youngest person in the world was a major celebrity.
Yeah.
And that was kind of cool. And like when they went to that school at one point, or I don't know if it was a children's hospital or if it was school.
No, it was a school. They go to an elementary school.
And it was totally shut down and like everything was worn out because there are no kids to play on it. So like,
isn't that like a truly bone chilling thing to think about? Like, why would you need schools? Like if the youngest kid in the world is like basically a college student,
right?
Schools wouldn't have existed.
All the billboards were like anti-aging, like stem cell, like trying to stay alive. Like,
I didn't notice that.
Was like, all the billboards were about pretty much anti-aging and like stem cell research and how to stay alive longer. I think one of the characters actually was like taking things to stay alive, and he talks. The main character brings it up. He's like, "Why are you even doing that?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the wealthy guy who lived."
His cousin. I think it's his cousin.
Yeah, it's his cousin.
Yeah, because if humanity is going to survive, that would be like the only thing you can do. If no one's having kids, then you just want to try and survive long enough to try and figure out how to have kids. So people are just, trying to stay alive. I'm glad that you brought that up, Kory, the billboards and stuff, because that was something else they were going for with this movie, is little exposition in terms of dialogue. Like there's a lot of scenes where the camera pans around and like you see the billboards, or like that scene where Clive Owen's character is taken hostage and they have all these newspapers. They actually spent hours. They had an entire team behind the scenes for this movie who spent hours and hours and hours creating and researching what would be some naturally progressive news stories 21 years later. They actually wrote newspaper articles so that if you stopped and paused the frame, like you could read those newspaper articles and it would make sense. Like that's that cool. Level of commitment and detail is insane. Like some of the titles and the headlines, I mean, they all had to make stuff up that would have been like 2026 or 2027. Right? It had to be all new, like made up stuff that maybe would have naturally progressed with the things happening in this movie. Same with the billboards, like Kory said. So I think it's really cool how they don't really explain a lot of stuff in this movie, like what's happened to society. They show you, right? A lot of things are done. It's more visual storytelling. Something else is really chilling in this movie that I think is very reminiscent of things going on right now is the treatment of refugees, or in the movie they call them Fugees in the movie.
I was going to ask about that because I didn't really understand why Britain was like quarantined. I missed that.
It's a visual piece as well. So there's a moment. It's very brief. There's a moment when he's on a train when Clive Owen's character's on a train and he looks up and there's like a monitor on the train and it tells you that every other country in the world has fallen apart. And it's like Britain it's like an advertisement for Britain's government. It's like everywhere has fallen apart, but Britain has remained strong. Britain strong. It's like this propaganda commercial. So basically they're telling you, and there's a few other news clips in the movie too, like where they tell you that essentially the entire world, like every other country's government and like infrastructure and social structure is completely collapsed except for Britain. Britain has like the only remaining government that is like still in power, and like their country is like somewhat functioning better than everyone else. So everyone's trying to come there. So all these refugees, from all over the world, and they're literally like imprisoning them or killing them. It's super messed up.
Yeah.
Which again, I hate getting super political, but this movie is very political, and we've seen a lot of that in the current political climate in the United States recently, with kind of the outrage in terms of immigrants coming from Central and South America, trying to escape war-torn and poverty-stricken countries. It's very relevant to us here, but to the degree it's shown in the film, obviously it's a little bit more extreme. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but
yeah, I thought the refugee camps were definitely interesting. I didn't really
refugee city. They have a whole city. Right. It's crazy.
I didn't really get why it was, but now I'm understanding more, and that's kind of what I figured. Like I understood that all the other countries were kind of ruined, but it's definitely freaky. It was like almost Holocaust looking, where they're unloading buses and trains of people, and
it does feel like a modern Holocaust in the movie.
Right. I don't know. I couldn't imagine
people
living in it
going to it. Like, it's not like they're going. Like, it's not like the English are going out of their way to round these people up. They're coming to them, and they just don't know what to do with them. And so it's taken to an extreme. Like, either put them in this giant ghetto, like they did in Warsaw in World War II. A refugee city, or round them up and exterminate them, which you see that in some scenes in the movie. It's super disturbing.
Yeah.
And they're actively going out of their way constantly. The police, and like the equivalent, to like, immigration police, like going around and rounding people up. They constantly talk about having their papers, their passports, which again feels like something out of World War II. Right. Having your papers or your passport with you to make sure you're a citizen.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Which is super chilling, obviously, for a lot of reasons. But again, does it feel like a natural progression? I think so. I feel like if something like that had happened, that's the thing about this movie. It feels very real. And I'm going to get into the cinematography in a little bit here, because that's part of the reason the movie feels so real, is it's shot like a documentary where a lot of it's handheld and they're running around with the characters. But again, a lot of the themes and kind of ideas in this, I don't feel like are that far-fetched. Like you watch something like Star Wars, and obviously that's like science fiction, fantasy, space opera. Even if you watch something like, I don't know, Interstellar, which is a little bit more grounded in science, but still seems like super outside of the realm of possibility to us. But you watch something like this, which is, dystopian science fiction, where it's like just 20 years in the future, now 6 years in the future, and it doesn't really feel like outside the realm of possibilities, like that far away with some of the way things are going. Obviously I hope things don't get worse, but we've had a lot of bad things going on in the last year plus.
I think like the bad stuff is entertaining to people because it's like the worst of the worst. I understand what you're saying. I see what you mean by how it's more realistic than like Interstellar or like some maybe that's a bad example, but I don't know. I feel like we're farther away from that maybe than you do. But I also see how we could get there. You know what I mean? I mean, definitely we're not 6 years away from it, but I also don't even feel like we're 20 years away from that. I think things generally tend to...
I think we're like civilized enough as a human race at this point where like, I don't know if that would exactly happen to like that extent. I think if we didn't make like the correct decisions, like in hundreds of years, we would get to that for sure.
My argument though, is if you have the determining factor that this movie has with the worldwide infertility.
So that's
like that's like the deciding like factor of this film is the fact that there's no more people being produced.
That kind of bothered me because they didn't really address why. I mean, they don't know why, but I was kind of like, okay, so
That's
everybody just can't
intentional
have
too.
No, I get it, and like that's part of the movie. But my thing was like, oh, okay, so nobody can have babies anymore. How did that happen? Oh, we don't know. It just seemed convenient that they just
Nobody's
say,
having sex anymore.
So I want to read a quote because I'm glad that you brought that up because there's a lot of things in this movie actually that are not really explained.
Right.
That's a big one. Obviously, they don't explain the infertility,
which they don't know. They say they don't know in the movie, right? Like they don't know why.
Yeah. It's
like,
not, even in the movie, they don't really have an answer when some of the characters talk about it. There's not really an answer. But I want to read you guys a quote from the. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say this before you read your quote. That part of it, that seems realistic to me. Though we don't know why, especially with COVID and everything that's happened, because all the unknowns and all that stuff that went down when COVID started, like we don't know how to control this thing. We don't know what it's all. We don't know how easy it's passed. All that stuff. It's amazing when you face a worldwide crisis like that, how much people don't know and how much you realize.
Yeah,
we're all adults.
You just lived it.
Right. Well, exactly. Like we're all adults now. I mean, as compared to kids, when you're growing up, you're like, oh, the adults know everything. Like they know how to figure stuff out. But now that we're adults and this thing has happened, it's like not very many people know that much stuff. Like
then imagine like at least we've had a lot of cooperation during the pandemic that we're going through. But imagine like in this movie where all the governments start falling apart and you get all these like militant groups and like uprisings and all this stuff going on that you kind of see in the movie, then there's going to be less and less people willing to commit to finding a solution. Right. Or the resources are running out because the governments are falling apart, money is falling apart, economy's falling apart. So it's not like now where like the world poured their resources into finding, things they could do about the current pandemic that we face. But like in the movie, it's like if those resources don't exist, then you see where the movie gets to in terms of in 2027 from 2006, that 21 year
thing with COVID though is that there was it wasn't like an almighty like plague where like people were dropping like flies on the street. There was an end. Like there was a way that we thought we could figure out how to cure it. Where that, like you literally just don't know.
It's terrifying. Like I can't even imagine living in a world where like all of a sudden
like imagine if
everyone's infertile.
COVID, people were just dying.
Right.
Like you were just dying in your sleep and nobody knew why.
Right.
Like when you got COVID, you just died. Period.
Right.
No, yeah, I that would be a far more extreme example that would definitely be even more chilling. But going back to what Zach said, I do want to read this quote to you guys because I think it's very interesting. It kind of helps explain some of like the intention behind the film. So Alfonso Cuarón, the director, and he's credited as a co-writer. There's like 5 people credited as writing this movie. He said this is on his dislike for exposition in movies. He said there's a kind of cinema I detest. It's a cinema that's about exposition and explanations. It's become now what I call a medium for lazy readers. Cinema is a hostage of narrative. I'm very good at narrative as a hostage of cinema. And it goes on, Cuarón's disdain for backstory and exposition led him to use the concept of female infertility as a metaphor for the fading sense of hope. The almost mythical human project is turned into a metaphor for the possibility of the evolution of the human spirit, the evolution of human understanding. Without dictating how the audience should feel by the end of the film, Cuarón encourages viewers to come to their own conclusions about the sense of hope that's depicted in the final scenes. His quote continues, "We wanted the end to be a glimpse of a possibility of hope, for the audience to invest their own sense of hope into that ending. So if you're a hopeful person, you will see the hope. If you're a bleak person, you're going to see a complete hopelessness at the end," which I think is really genius. What's that?
Jimmy thought everybody was going to die still.
I was confused. I wasn't sure which way to take it.
And I like that though, because that's what he's saying. Like you could watch this movie, 2 completely different people could watch this movie and interpret the ending multiple ways. I've read multiple interpretations on the ending.
I like the ending because it seemed to represent uncertainty, and that's like human life going forward. There's so much stuff we don't know, and like, oh, there's people. Are they good or bad? We don't know. Like, you never know what the right path is. It's just
very
like,
gray.
It's gray.
We're on a fishing boat.
I know.
Like a fishing boat too. But also earlier in the film, they said that it is a fishing boat disguised as a fishing boat to hide the utopia or whatever they're supposed to be going to.
Yeah, so. The human project's like going to be coming out in a not like some beautiful, I don't know,
Deadliest
yacht
Catch
or something.
Island where it's sunny and 80.
Yeah.
I also like
wrangle this bitch and her baby, get her in this boat.
I also like that the boat's name was Tomorrow, because I feel like tomorrow in general just has a sense of optimism to it, where
Like
it's always going to be better tomorrow, or it's another day, new start.
The sun will come out tomorrow.
Exactly. Sun will come out tomorrow. Yeah, I like that.
We can come back to the ending though, because I do want to, before we really get into the ending some more and some interpretations, let's get back to a couple more like details, some of the aspects of the film. What'd you guys think of the cast? I always forget Charlie Hunnam is in this, who plays Jax in Sons of Anarchy, Jackson Teller. He's the one who has the dreads, who's like always swearing and yelling. Have you guys never seen Sons of Anarchy?
No.
Oh, okay. He's in other movies too. But
what's his role in this movie that we just watched?
I just told you he's the guy with the dreads who's part of the Fishes militant group. Who's like, he runs up to the car at one point. I got a clean shot. Can I get him? Can I shoot him? And then he runs it, or the girl kicks the door at him. That guy. He's kind of an asshole all the way through the movie. Chiwetel Ejiofor is really good in this. I love him in everything. He's great in 12 Years a Slave, but he's really good in this. Yeah. He's kind of has a minor role. Obviously, Julianne Moore is not in the movie very long, but she's really good in the first act. And then you have Clive Owen and Michael Caine.
Yeah.
I don't remember the actress's name of the girl who's pregnant.
She was good.
Her name is Claire Hope Ashidi. No idea if I said that right.
I really like the secondary characters in this movie, like what the old guy. What's his name? You just
Michael Caine and the lady who was helping
Michael Caine.
Yeah, Michael Caine was great, and I really like the cop that helped him out.
Sid, who talks in the third person.
He was fantastic. He was like one of my favorite characters, and he ended up being a bad dude, right?
I mean, he's kind of one of these characters who's like.
Right.
Is he a bad guy, or is he like just trying to take advantage of a crappy situation? Like he realizes there's a bounty on their head and he can make a lot of money. When he hears initially that he's helping Friends of Jasper, Michael Caine's character, he's like, okay. Then he finds out they're like, on the run from the government. He can make a lot of money. And he's like,
I liked his character.
His head broken half.
Oh God.
With a brick or whatever it was.
It was a battery. It was a car battery. Just smashes his face, and it's brutal. I really like how Clive Owen, like, he doesn't do anything fancy in this movie. And again, I've watched some interviews and I've read some stuff on the making of the movie, and like the intention for his character, even in the novel, this movie's based on a novel. Apparently they changed quite a bit from the book though. But his character like is intended to be like an everyman character. Like he's not supposed to really be that special. He's not supposed to be some action hero. Even though you're following him through the action, the intention is that he's grounded in like a realistic, like common man that you could relate to, just got roped into this crazy situation. I think he does a good job in that very simple role. And it's believable that like from the beginning of the movie, he's just like super apathetic and doesn't give a shit. And then by the end, he's super invested, like cares. And it's like, he's hopeless, right? And he regains like this sense of faith and hope and humanity by the end of the film, which I think is it's a very subtle and like simple performance, but I think it's a really well done character in terms of how it's written and how it's carried out throughout the movie.
I got two things I want to mention about Clive Owen in the film. I really enjoyed his performance. I'm finding myself that I forget about him a lot and as an actor, and I really enjoy his performances.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to mention, kind of going along that everyman type of role, is that he never uses a gun in the whole movie, which seems like it'd be something that'd be really easy in an action film to have your hero be like a gunsmith. The only time he uses a weapon really is when he uses that car battery, and then he just picks that up out of sheer kind of coincidence,
self-defense. Like he's just trying to escape.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting, kind of, touches note back to the whole everyman, nothing special. He's just a guy.
I mean, he's wearing flip-flops for half the movie.
That was my next point. What is the point of that? Why did they show him?
That's the point. Like, he's like the most unlikely
giving up
hero.
On life. Like he's just hanging out.
What was he wearing before the flip-flops?
So remember when he was at the safe house with the Fishes, the militant group, he overheard the conversation that they were going to kill him, so he escaped, and he walked down the stairs without his shoes on, not anticipating he was going to have to escape, and then he just didn't have his shoes when he escaped. Okay. So when he got to Jasper's house, the only shoes he found that fit were that pair of flip-flops.
Okay,
I have a question about Jasper and the lady that was there. Was that his mom?
Wife. Again,
that was Jasper's wife.
Again, visual storytelling. There's a moment with the camera when he first goes to Jasper's house and it pans across the bunch of newspaper articles.
I saw that, yeah.
And it talks about how it tells you kind of about them. He was a political cartoonist. Right. She was an activist, and she was captured and tortured. And so she's like, something happened to her. She was like tortured, and she's like suffering from like PTSD or something from being tortured as like an activist. So they both like support the refugees. So they're like they're not a part of the Fishes, that Julianne Moore's, militant group, but that's kind of like similar. They're there's groups of people that are fighting for the rights of the refugees and the immigrants.
Yeah.
And so was Clive Owen's character. That was a small moment when Jasper is talking to the main girl who's pregnant, and then the other woman who's helping her, and Clive Owen's like eavesdropping on the conversation. He talks about how Clive Owen's character used to be an activist. Him and Julianne Moore met when they were protesting. Their characters met, got married, and had a baby. And when the baby died from a pandemic in 2009, that they split up, and then he kind of became jaded by life or depressed and just didn't care anymore. So he had been a much different character. So the next thing, it doesn't seem like you guys have anything else to add with the performances. I didn't think the performances were like, they're all really good, but there's nothing like crazy about them. They're all pretty straightforward, and they're well done, but they're not like, there's not some iconic performance in this movie. This movie is like more about its atmosphere, its themes, its technical aspects, and its cinematography. So I would be remiss if we did not talk about the camera work in this movie. It's one of the reasons it's often like considered a modern classic or like an iconic science fiction film, because Cuarón and his cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki, which if you guys watched Birdman and The Revenant, same cinematographer. And in those movies, when he works with Iñárritu, he works with a lot of long takes. The production studio told Cuarón not to do these takes. They said, let's do it in post. Let's use CGI. Let's use computers. And him and Lubezki said, no, screw that. They said, we're going to do this for real. Because their intention behind this movie was to make everything very raw and real and feel like a documentary. Right? And they said, if we're going to do that, there should be a lot of seamless scenes, where if it feels like a documentary, there's not going to be a lot of cuts, like you're walking around with the characters and in the environment. And there are really three distinct, there's a lot of long takes in the movie, but there's three particularly long scenes that stand out. The longest scene is the end, obviously, when Theo there's a scene it's over 6 minutes without a cut. It's at the end when Theo gets captured, escapes, runs down a street, and then into that building during a battle. That's over 6 minutes without a cut. And it's so crazy because did you guys notice all the blood on the camera?
Yeah, I like that. I really enjoyed that.
So Cuarón didn't want that. Lubezki, his cinematographer, had to argue with him to keep it in. Because that was apparently that whole scene, if they screwed it up, it took 5 hours to set everything back up and do it all over again. Like just to get everything back in place and get people where they needed to be, all the effects, the explosions, the gunfire, it would take them 5 hours just to set it all back up again for a 6 minute take. So he argued and he said the blood adds like a really cool effect. Like it makes you feel like you're there and you just got sprayed in the face with someone's blood.
He just didn't want to do another take. He just wanted to go home.
Well, that's another thing.
Blood's cool.
Apparently it was like one of the best. They did it more than once, and that was one of the best takes they got. But he said the blood kind of added more to it.
So.
Now he should have been smoked in that scene. There's no way he wouldn't have been smoked, but it was a good scene.
It's
also,
a movie.
Here's the engineer in me.
He does get shot, though.
That hospital that they went into, that's a strong building. That hospital got shot by like 10 times by like a tank or whatever the hell that was. I was like, damn, that building should be going down right now.
Dude, that entire 6 minute sequence is nuts.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like the level of like rehearsal and choreography that would go into like all of that going on in one seamless take. Like to do that 6 minute stretch is just insane. Like the technical abilities behind it. The next longest scene obviously is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. It's also one of the most famous scenes in terms of what they had to do to accomplish it. It's over 4 minutes, and it's in a car when they go down the country road and they're ambushed early in the movie by the gang.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you guys, if you get a chance, maybe I'll find the video and send you the link. They built a car with a giant box on the roof, and there was 2 people. The camera operator and the cinematographer were on the roof of the car in this giant, like, holding container so that they could operate the camera. The windshield could go in and out. The seats could go up and down because the camera is attached to the interior roof of the car, and it's moving and spinning all around the car, right? They also built on the outside of the car, just below, you don't see it because it's just below the windows. They had other people sitting around the outside of the car to continue to help with kind of some of the necessary, like, instructions and things going on with the scene. But if you get a chance to watch that video, the behind the scenes, it's pretty amazing. This car, this giant thing they have built on the outside of it, you never see because the camera's in the car. But it's a really crazy scene in terms of character building, and then obviously subsequently with what happens to Julianne Moore's character, and then just all the action going on. I mean, it's a crazy scene. And I really enjoy that scene. I don't know what you guys thought about that one, but it's pretty crazy.
I love the scene when the other scene when they're at the, I can't remember where they're at, but anyway, he finds out that they want to kill him, and he's like trying to start the car, start the car down the hill.
And then right before that, he's trying to sneak and pull out all of the
wires.
Yeah, he's like pulling stuff out of the cars under the hood.
Yeah.
And then that car,
get this shitty car to start.
Yeah, then the car won't start unless you have it moving. It's like a piece of junk car.
The one guy was like Forrest Gump. He was like sprinting.
That was Charlie Hunnam's character, yeah. He's like, I got a shot. Can I shoot him?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed those scenes. The long takes really like draw me in, and my attention is like so focused on every single detail that happens.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and you have to be like so alert because in that short period of time, there's so much to take in and learn from the movie. Yeah, thinking about Birdman and what was the other one, Vince?
The Revenant, same cinematographer.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of Lubeski. If I went through his filmography, you guys would be like, oh wow, like he's done a lot of really great movies.
Yeah, I really enjoy Birdman. I really enjoyed, and The Revenant. The time I saw it, I really enjoyed it too. So seeing those long takes really, draws me in, and I'm finding that is something I really enjoy about a film. So I enjoyed both those scenes really quite a bit. I was so focused and couldn't be bothered. It was awesome.
It's like live sports.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening.
Well, and again, what people don't often understand with those long sequences is the amount of preparation and rehearsal that goes into it. I'm glad you brought up Birdman, because Birdman is a movie made to look like it's done in one take. They do some tricks with the camera because they do cut, but it's made to look like it's done in one take. And there are a lot of literally long sequences in that movie. And a lot of the actors behind the scene for that movie said it was so challenging to rehearse and memorize all their lines, because a lot of actors don't ever have to do anything like that. They'll have a camera, they'll film like a few seconds or maybe a minute at most, and they cut. And then they maybe move the camera around, they'll film the scene again from a different angle. But what people don't understand with the scenes like this, especially with how much is going on. Like I said, that 6-minute scene, I read that it took 5 hours just to get everything set up when they screwed a take up. Like,
especially
that's
in
insane.
like a war zone, like a war setting. I can't imagine
all those vehicles, all those extras, all those special effects, the explosions, the gunfire, literal fire. I mean, there's so much going on that like just takes so much rehearsal and so much like, prep work and communication. I mean, there's so many people behind the scenes that have to communicate, like people on walkie-talkies. Okay, ready with this explosion, or ready with, okay, go. It's just insane. I couldn't imagine, having to orchestrate all that, and like the pressure from the studio who are investing money in this movie. Like if you screw it up and you're just running up a bill because you have to keep redoing the scene, you're paying all these people all this money. The final scene that's another long one that's over 4 minutes is the birth. The birth is 3 minutes. The birth is just over 3 minutes long take.
I had a bone to pick with that too, because I've just had a baby and my wife's birth was not 3 minutes long.
So again, it's a movie, but obviously that scene they use heavy CGI to show a real live birth. They show it crown, they show everything. It's not sugar coated. and the CGI doesn't hold up super well. It's a little dated, obviously 2006, it's 15 years old, but I think it doesn't look too bad for 2006.
I was gonna say I gave it props. I thought
it's pretty convincing.
Yeah, I
mean, she was running around for like hours before that, so that baby was like probably just falling out. I mean, she was like running all day.
That is true.
I was not watching super close because once again I was on an airplane, so I was very self-conscious that everybody around me was watching this and not understanding the context of it. So I was very self-conscious, and I just kind of put my phone down for a minute until I knew that scene was kind of over.
The guy behind me was like, "That dude's watching a woman give birth.
Exactly.
What's this guy's problem?"
Exactly.
Pregnant lady born, nice.
I watched Black Swan on a plane one time. I'm like, ooh, I feel really weird. I feel really weird about people like seeing over my shoulder when watching that movie.
That's an interesting movie.
But yeah, all three of those sequences and a lot of the sequences in the movie are just super impressive, and some of the reasons why I love this movie so much. We kind of mentioned earlier some of the technology and production design, visual aesthetics. I think that's another thing this movie does really effectively is it's not a pretty movie in terms of like the aesthetics. It's meant to look ugly, like worn down. And obviously it's England, so it's cold. There's a few scenes in the movie where they show some snow and people's breath. The birthing scene, you can see their breath. So I do like that attention to detail, that especially if they're assuming a dystopian future, like everything in the surroundings as you look, in any given frame in the movie is done so well, so convincing in terms of like the collapse of infrastructure and just things not looking good. Everything just looks like crap. It's amazing if you watch the behind the scenes how they shut down whole streets in London to film some of these sequences. This was going on during the London bombings when they were filming this. Some of you guys remember, we were pretty young. The London bombings took place in 2005, 2004. That killed a lot of people in like subways, I believe. But the other iconic long take that's not as long, but the coffee shop scene to open the movie, where he gets a coffee and it blows up right as he gets out. They waited a long time to film that scene because they thought it would be upset a lot of people to film that sequence, because that was a real street in London that they shut down to film that scene.
I had to zoom or rewind because I was so early in the film. I wasn't quite, fully
ready for it.
Wasn't ready for it. And the part that made me rewind was the woman. I think she was like carrying her arm or something.
She walked with her arm down the street. I was like, oh my God.
What was that?
It pulls you into the movie. If you're not ready for it, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
This is what we're watching, huh?
Yeah. It pulls you into the movie pretty quick.
You gonna beat somebody with that thing or what?
Goodness.
I also really like the use of sound and music in this movie too. Movie's got a pretty good score. It's understated. I don't think it's like super overpowering, but there's a lot of good use of sound in the movie too. Sound design's really good. But yeah, I think the movie has a lot of great stuff going on in terms of the technical aspects, and that's one of the reasons I think it's so memorable and one of the most famous films from the 21st century, often included on lists of greatest films from the 21st century or greatest films of all time, just because I think of all the technical aspects. Again, in terms of the storytelling, it's very theme heavy, and it does a really good job with visual storytelling, but I don't think it really reinvents anything in the genre in terms of the storytelling or characters. I mean, there's a lot of dystopian future movies. This one I think is just so memorable because it's so grounded. It has that sense of realism, where a lot of movies they feel like a movie. This one feels like a documentary, like it's something that could happen down the road. Maybe not beat for beat, but something similar. I watched a documentary that came out in 2019 about Syria, about people living in Syria, and how they're constantly bombarded by bombs every single day, and they're living in just bombed out cities. That's just where they live their life. I mean, so there's people around the world, in third world countries, or even some nice countries, that kind of deal with some of those horrible atrocities and tragedies that are, they're numb to it because it happens on a daily basis. Most of the Middle East, like Iraq, Syria, right? Iran, some of those places, Jerusalem. They deal with a lot of really scary stuff, unfortunately. So, you know, obviously this is London, and the movie talks about a lot of major first world countries and wealthy countries falling apart. So, you know, will the United States fall apart in 2027? I hope not. But I don't know.
I'm intrigued to watch this movie again on like a TV screen or a big screen.
I think you should.
I think I missed a lot. Because I honestly, when I got done with it, I was like, meh, take it or leave it.
I think it's a movie that would reward being watched on a big TV with surround sound.
Right, I missed a lot of details, and I could tell from our discussion here. So I feel
because
like
again,
again.
I think it's not like a comedy. Like I'm going to criticize you a little bit here. Watch a movie on your phone. Like if you're watching like a comedy film, it's like, oh, whatever. Like I'm just watching my phone. But like a movie like this, like what you're going to get out of it is like the technical aspects, and you're going to get that like on a big screen and with surround sound.
You can criticize all you want, but next time you got to give them more than a week's advance notice, my man.
I thought it was more than a week. I thought it was like 2 weeks. Pretty sure it was like 2 weeks.
Pretty sure it was Tuesday that you told me what movie we were watching. Doesn't matter.
It was before you went to Montaigne.
I don't think it was. Doesn't matter.
The quarterback I've seen is Joe Montaigne.
So the last couple of things I want to talk about, unless you guys had anything else to add, if you had something else you want to add, let me know. But I wanted to talk about the end. So I kind of we brought it up a little bit, but then I kind of said let's push on to some other things and save it for later. So what do you guys think of the ending? Obviously, I read that quote from Cuarón, and he kind of intentionally leaves it very ambiguous. I don't know if that's how the book ends. I haven't read the book, and I haven't really read what the book's ending is. But obviously, the film, you know, you could take it a few different ways. There's probably a few different ways you can interpret it.
Can we take a quick detour back real quick? I want to talk about just real quick. The scene where they're in the building. Clive Owen's character meets back up with Key, and they're walking the baby out of the building, and like everything stops.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring that scene up. I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I just thought that was so cool because like how life brings hope, and how those people that are, you know, fighting for like till death, just absolutely
the heavy irony of that scene, like the juxtaposition of death and dead bodies and people trying to kill each other, and then everyone just stops in awe of life.
Yeah, and then
it's immediately punctuated with them start shooting each other again. Right, one guy fires off like a rocket grenade, all of a sudden everyone's shooting and killing each other again.
Yeah, I just thought that was really a moving scene.
It's super. I tear up every time I watch that scene. It makes me tear up because it's so powerful to see, because it's very realistic. Like if you hadn't seen a baby in like 20 years, nowhere, you know, other than maybe videos online, you hadn't seen a baby in real life in more than 2 decades. Could you imagine like, and then it's just so powerful to see two sides who are fighting each other. Everyone just stops, and like the soldiers like, get away, let them through. You know, it's like everyone's like just in awe.
Yeah,
it's super powerful.
I was relating some of that to, like, you know, when you go to a grocery store with your kid and all the old ladies coo and gawk at them, and
look at the baby.
And it was kind of like that, but like to a super extreme where it's like everybody, and they were like singing, and the soldiers.
But what yours describe is more like, oh, they're cute. Whereas this is like people like are like,
holy shit, it's a baby.
Yeah, their
but
jaws
still
drop.
but still like the fact that people do that now, and imagine if there was not a baby for 20 years, and then really people would be like, holy cow.
Yeah, that is a good point, because you're right. Even now, when people see babies, not everyone, but certain people, there's quite a few people. I mean, I myself, I see a newborn baby. Even before I had kids, I'd be like, oh, it's a newborn baby. Like, you know, but like, if you hadn't seen one in 20 years, you're like, oh my God, a baby.
Yeah.
Especially if that was like the worldwide issue that everyone's facing is extinction, because mankind may go extinct because we're almost 20 years removed from no babies. And then then you're in the middle of this war battle and you see one, like, it's here, there's a baby. Especially before everyone sees it, they hear the crying. I love that moment when the baby's screaming and people in the hallway kind of all stop and they're looking out, and the woman drops to her knees and she's praying. It is. I'm glad you mentioned that, Jim, because I did want to talk about that earlier and I forgot. So I'm glad you brought that back up. That's such a powerful moment. It's one of the probably most. There's not a lot of scenes in this one because, again, the characters are fine. I think they're just kind of a driving force for the general themes and ideas in the movie. They're not necessarily.
There's no like scenes where it like focuses on one character like for an intense moment. Everything's just like continuously happening.
Right.
Yeah, because it's more about the themes, the ideas, the visuals, and just the overall storytelling and concepts. It's not, the characters are fine, right? They're okay, but they're just kind of there to bring you along this ride through this world that's like a dystopian future. You know what I mean? And so I don't think, other than that moment, there's not like a lot of like super heavy emotional moments where you feel like, other than the baby being born, I think that's a pretty well done scene, powerful scene, but not even quite as close as like the emotional weight and like intensity in terms of the emotions that you feel with that scene, where everyone's just in awe of seeing life finally. And especially when it comes at the end of the movie, when like you've seen the struggle and the plight and the journey of everyone through this film, like everything they're going through, and then by the end of the movie, it's like, it's coming because the audience has known for a long time that the character is helping this pregnant woman. But then when you finally see it and everyone gets to see it and like be a part of this joy, it's like, it's a sense of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
So before we get to the ending, I wanted to say I also like the scene where they kind of address the parallels to the story of Jesus, where she's sitting there and he's like, somebody asks her, so do you know who the father is? And she goes, no, I'm a virgin. And then she starts laughing, like, wouldn't that be something? Yeah. I thought that was pretty clever because I was thinking that the whole time. I mean, you kind of have to, right? You're kind of like, oh, this is.
And
like
then she admits that she's a whore. So.
Right. It was
the
just
opposite.
Really funny.
Yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
I don't know any of the man's
Exactly.
men plural names. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Zach, because he got criticized for that. So apparently the book, one of the biggest changes is the book has a lot of heavy themes of Christianity.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of religious overtones. This movie there's some mention, and the title of the film is actually from a Bible verse. But a lot of the mention of religion is more metaphorical and symbolic. It's not really like spoken. It's not really vocalized, or it's not as heavy as apparently as it is in the book. So I think it's funny that you mentioned that scene, because that almost seems like it's spitting
right
in the face of religion.
Yeah.
A bit.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny because it's like, I feel like they were trying to make, or I feel like everybody was thinking, oh, this is kind of like the story of Jesus, and then she goes, nah. It was just kind of funny.
I'm just kidding, just messing.
Right.
Yeah, I do like that.
I think she sails into the sunsets all happy willy-nilly. But I don't know if they ever have another baby.
Mm.
She did have a daughter, though, which also gives you the sense that there's hope.
Right.
Do you think Clive Owen's character dies?
Yeah.
Yeah, he died on that boat.
I mean, he
did.
passed out.
No, he was dead.
He was dead.
He was dead.
You pass out before you die when you're bleeding.
Vince, you're in denial. He was dead.
He's dead.
So
He's
there was a
playing-
pound of blood on the floor.
Oh, relax. I'm playing devil's advocate.
No, he's dead.
He dies, but she lives, and she has a daughter, and they both get pregnant at the same time.
But even if she survives, does the world solve its problem? Are more people going to be fertile?
That's what I'm saying.
It's just
Her and
one
her daughter
baby.
are the only two at this point.
We don't even know that her daughter's fertile.
So
Yeah.
apparently it's kind of
Mom's
talked about a little bit.
We don't know.
It's kind of talked about a little bit, but the Human Project, where she's going, is like this organization that's trying to work towards solving the problem. That's what it's kind of mentioned a little bit. And I looked it up because when they mentioned the name of the place they're going, I wasn't sure where it was. It's a series of islands far off the coast of Portugal. The Azores? I can't remember what they were called because I was like, what is that? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure where that was. And I looked it up and it was off the coast of Portugal. Azores.
Okay.
Azores. Azores. Again,
Take your
it's
word
a
for it.
series of islands off the coast of Portugal. So, kind of a far journey she has to take. If you think of where, off of the southern coast of London or England, off the southern coast of England, get all the way down to Portugal. Pretty bit of a journey, but it's kind of assumed that, the ending to me is hopeful. The other thing, okay, so this is going back to people's interpretations of the ending. Did you guys? I know you made fun of me last time for talking about watching the credits. Did you watch a little bit into the credits?
No.
Not at all. You turned the movie off without listening to the credits.
Yep.
So all of you missed these sounds over the credits.
Oh no, I heard that. Yeah.
No, I turned it off right away.
Kids.
I wasn't very impressed.
Yeah, I heard that.
The kids
Oh,
laughing.
the laughter. Yeah, no, I did hear that.
So it plays on it. Most of the early portions of the credits, there's kids laughing and cheering and like playing sounds of them like being joyful and playing. That's heard over the credits, and so a lot of people have interpreted that as it's supposed to be implying that they solved the problem.
I think that's people wanting a positive outcome.
Yeah. So my negative attitude. And I'll preface, or
Your glass half full.
That was the children all dying.
no, I'll preface this with, after thinking about the film more and that ending, I do take it more as that I do think that is the boat she has to get on to make it to wherever she needs to go. Getting back to I don't know if it's going to solve the world's problem or not, but I digress. The laughter, when I first heard it, because when I first watched the film, I thought that was, nope, yep, it's just a boat. She's dead. She's going to float away. Baby's going to die. She's going to die, whatever. And then I thought that the laughter was like, kind of like children mockingly laughing. So kind of like, I was like, whoa, I don't like this. And I'd like
a big middle finger from the non-existent children of the world.
You a serial killer?
Yeah. So, no.
Yeah, what the hell is wrong with you?
Not that I would
Are you incapable of experiencing joy?
I don't know. What is joy?
Okay.
But yeah, so like I was watching that and it just, I don't know. That's how I took it originally, but I can see where people maybe were saying, okay, yeah, children's laughter is because of problem solved, but
I don't think so. I don't buy it.
I don't really buy it either.
Bullshit. So I'm not really one side or the other on this. My opinion is that the end of the movie was a metaphor for the unknown that humanity faces. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's coming. Nobody really knows, like, I don't know, anything really. I mean, we have an idea for how we've gotten this far, and the reality is the history that we know is such a short blip in time in regards to the whole history of Earth, the true history of Earth. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it alludes to the fact that nobody knows, and so I didn't really make a decision on whether she died or lived or whether she saved the human race. It was just kind of like, take your shot. It seems like your best bet. I mean, go for it. It was very ominous at the end too. So like it was still so foggy, and not that it needed to like have a ray of sunshine.
You couldn't see that on your phone, but
exactly.
You were picking her up smiling.
No, I just felt like it was. It didn't make a decision for you for a reason, because it was addressing the unknown. So, yeah.
No, and I agree, because the movie's theme is like hope in the face of insurmountable odds. You know, that kind of idea that like humanity throughout this film is just facing complete desperation, hopelessness. Yet by the end, there's just this tiny ray of hope. And I like that you brought that up, because it's true. I mean, even in our lives and in our real life, we're in the middle of not in the middle, hopefully at the back end of a pandemic, but like you just don't know. What does the future hold? You really don't ever know. Everything is, up for grabs. It's uncertain. Anything could happen type of deal. So I like
Caroline gonna have another kid in 6 months. We don't know.
She probably would kill me, but let's hope not.
Probably.
She would. She
most
would
likely.
In my sleep, she would murder me. Caroline, if you're listening, I love you, but it's true. So yeah, I do like the ambiguity of the end. I like Cuarón's approach to filmmaking and his approach in this movie. He has made a lot of great movies. I mean, he went on to, just before this, he did my favorite Harry Potter film, The Prisoner of Azkaban. I think it's the best one. He did that 2 years before this movie. I think it's the best one of the series. He did Gravity. He did Roma. He has a new movie coming out, I'm pretty sure, pretty soon here. But I do really like his approach to filmmaking. I think he's quite the filmmaker. And this movie, in my opinion, is a modern classic. I think 15 years removed, people are still talking about it. People are still listing it as one of the greatest films of the 21st century. An iconic film in science fiction, dystopian future movies, that genre, and iconic in the use of cinematography and a lot of the technical aspects in the film. I give it a perfect score for what it's going for. I think it's perfect in what it's trying to do, but that's just my humble opinion.
I'd watch it again.
Want to watch it again on a larger screen.
Yeah, I'd really like to
come
watch
over
it.
Come over to my house. We can watch it together.
Right,
I own a copy of it.
I want to watch it again just so I can pick up on more of the fine detail, like like you were mentioning with the newspapers and some of the media and television's on in the background.
There's a lot of use of visual storytelling with the newsreels and news footage, newspapers. Yeah, there's a lot of. I didn't even pick up some of the ads. Kory picked up some of those ads. There's some
billboards,
advertisements that are also very detailed in terms of relevancy to the film and the current, climate in the movie. So I think its attention to detail is also just like bar none. Like, I really appreciate movies that have that attention to detail, that rewatchability. Like every time you watch it, you can pick out new things and find interesting stuff going on in the background. I've watched it, I think 3 or 4 times now, and I've enjoyed it every time I've rewatched it.
Were they selling? Was that like that product that was in the old man, the weed dealer's house? Yeah. Was that like a product designed to like commit suicide? Was that what that was about?
The strawberry cough weed?
No. So like that blue box, and it was advertised all over the place too. But right before the fishes showed up to his place, he gave it to his dog and his wife. Yeah. Was that a product designed to like, just off yourself?
I think so.
Yeah, because Clive Owen thought that guy was dead before, and because that box was sitting there, and he's like, no, he used to kill rats with TMA.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what that was either, Jim. I'm glad you
understand. They never really went into it, but when they brought him to that scene, and then the scene where the fishes come and he gives it to his wife and dog, I was like, oof.
Right.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Weird stuff. That's scary.
Yeah, I think it's implied that like maybe that's a product on the market because people are so depressed with the fate of humanity.
For it in like some of the subs, and when he was getting picked up by the fishes, one of the advertisement like billboards he walked by was for that, and I was like, oh, that's weird. So it's just strange, really, really strange.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. I see. That's what I'm saying. Every time I watch this movie, I pick up on more things. That's why I think it does warrant rewatches.
Remember when he talked about the rats, but it was on the ground, so I just assumed it literally was for the rats.
I didn't pay that close attention where you said you were seeing advertisements for that product, though.
I'm pretty certain it did. Yeah, I think there were a couple. Don't quote me on that.
It wouldn't surprise me with the level of detail put into this film. I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I mean, it adds a really dark twist to the dystopia.
That they're actively selling, a suicide product on the market. That people are just like, yeah, I'm done with life.
That's capitalism, baby.
It sells if it sells, right?
Free enterprise society.
Oh, that's bad. That's so bad.
The crazy thing is, this movie came out in 2006, Cuarón's only done 2 movies since, and his follow-up was 7 years after this. I think he must have just been exhausted after this movie. Yeah, he's only made Gravity and Roma are the only 2 movies he's made since. Gravity was 2013, Roma was 2018.
When was The Revenant? Oh, that was the cinematographer. Sorry.
That's Iñárritu, yeah. Revenant was 2015.
All great movies.
Iñárritu hasn't made a film since that. It's been 6 years since he's done a movie.
Right.
These guys just pour their heart and soul into these realistic movies that they are completely committed to doing for real. It's insane. But yeah, glad you guys. It sounds like enjoy it overall. It sounds like you guys enjoyed this one a bit more than Babel.
I think I actually like Babel more personally, but
really. I really enjoy Babel.
I need to rewatch it again before I make a final commitment. So,
did you watch that one on your phone too?
No.
You're such an asshole. All right. So, do you guys have anything else you want to add?
I need to go to bed.
Well, the only other thing I would like to do before we leave and end this is I would like to do a part 3.
So, I mean, I get to pick a movie?
Zach.
No.
Yes, finally.
Kory picked a movie. James picked a movie. Jimmy picked Babel. Kory picked Children of Men. Zach, would you like to pick a movie that was discussed in our game to talk about in probably 2, 3, 4 weeks, whenever?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready to pick it right now if you want to do it on air.
Oh, you already have absolutely.
Ooh.
You already have a movie ready to go?
Yeah. I want to watch There Will Be Blood. I've been dying to watch that for a while. And I believe it's on Netflix, so it's free to you.
It is.
You're welcome.
It is on
Please
Netflix.
don't die. Jesus, it's not that bad. It's not that deep.
No. What?
You said,
What?
I've been dying to watch it.
Oh, no. I've been wanting to watch it for a while. It's been on my
Nobody
list.
makes me die.
Nobody makes me bleed blood.
There will be blood.
I was really hoping you were going to go with Payne's Labyrinth.
I was kind of hoping you were
No.
going to go with Pan's Labyrinth too, because I really want to rewatch that one. But
What's the
I
movie?
would.
That was a
There Will Be
strategic
Blood.
pick for me when I said Pan's Labyrinth, but it's too weird for me. I don't think I'd like it.
Yeah, I think that would be a kind of a Babel.
I was
situation.
kind of hoping that you would pick it though, because this is something that you guys did unintentionally and you guys didn't even realize it. But the directors of Children of Men, Babel, and Pan's Labyrinth are all from Mexico. They're all best friends. They all went to school together. Del Toro, Cuarón, and Iñárritu are all buddies.
Well, what
So,
the hell
like,
are we doing with our lives? We haven't
I
had a single
Iñárritu was
one.
Asian.
I
We're
thought it
all
was going to be,
buddies.
but the thing is, I just thought it was going to be crazy if we ended up doing all 3 of those movies because I don't know. And I just thought
Hate
it'd be
to
a
burst
weird
your bubble.
coincidence.
Or
No, I'm completely
Here's a fun
ready to
twist.
watch There Will Be Blood.
perhaps we should all just watch Dumb and Dumber for the 10th time and discuss that movie. 'Cause
We should
all-
do a live. We should do a live watching of Dumb and Dumber.
Yes, we should. That's such a great movie.
Oy.
All right, gentlemen.
There Will Be Blood will be the part 3 of Game 2 of Classics We're Embarrassed We Have Not Seen. Maybe Kory has seen this one and doesn't remember, because apparently the other 2 films he didn't think he had seen, and then he watched and goes, guys, I've seen both these movies. He'll start
Kory.
watching There Will Be Blood and be going, oh shit, I've seen this
CTE.
movie too.
CTE.
Too many concussions playing college football. Well, all right. If you listened along, thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on Children of Men. If you did not listen to the original game and our discussion of Babel, what are you doing with your life? Go listen to that. That was a great episode as well. And hopefully in, somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks from now, we'll have a discussion on 2007's There Will Be Blood from Paul Thomas Anderson, starring, what's his name?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day-Lewis. Jeez, oh Pete.
Man.
I blanked. Daniel Day-Lewis. Great movie. So yeah, thank you for joining us. The Film Nerd Podcast. I'm Vince, joined by guests Zac Hess, James Edgett, Kory Schrauben. Until next time, go watch some movies.